She was 72, 8 months widowed. Her wedding ring was still on her finger, not out of habit, but because taking it off felt like admitting the life she built was officially over. The flowers on her husband's grave hadn't even finished fading, and yet, someone new was already at her front door. He wasn't loud, he wasn't creepy, he wasn't obviously dangerous. He was calm, polite, helpful, the kind of man who holds eye contact a second longer than most people do, the kind of man who asks how you're really doing and waits for the answer, the kind of man who shows up with something warm in his hands and concern in his voice. To anyone watching from the outside, it might have looked like comfort. But here's the part people don't like to say out loud. Grief is visible. Loneliness is visible. Vulnerability is visible. And for the wrong person, those aren't emotions, they're opportunities. Now let me be clear, this isn't a story about a foolish old woman. She's not unintelligent. She's not gullible. She's not asking for it. She simply grieved long enough to become noticeable and exhausted enough to want relief. And if you're listening to this, the reason it matters is simple. This probably won't happen to you the same way, because you've been paying attention. You've heard stories. You understand how manipulation works. But it might happen to your sister who lost her husband last year, or your mother who's lonely and tired and doesn't want another conversation about being careful, or your daughter going through a divorce who just wants someone to tell her she's still wanted. And if you're a widower yourself, if you're even thinking about dating again, then you need to hear this too, because what you're about to learn isn't just about protection. It's about understanding the battlefield people are walking into. Last time, we talked about women who target men with assets, and the response was intense. People shared stories, painful ones, real ones. But a lot of you said something that stuck with me. It goes both ways. Yes, it does. So today we're flipping the lens, and by the end, you're going to recognize the pattern before the first casserole is finished baking. There's also one question, one simple question, that exposes these situations more often than almost anything else. I'll give you that question later. But first, you need to understand the play. There's a phrase floating around widow groups and older women's forums right now. Once you hear it, it sticks. Nurse and a purse. That's what some women call the kind of man who appears late in life with no savings, no plan, and a sudden deep appreciation for a woman who does have stability. Not just someone looking for companionship, someone shopping for a retirement strategy. Someone who wants the checkbook and the caregiving, the money in the medicine cabinet, the warm meals and the future hospital visits. One woman summed it up in a sentence that sounds harsh until you've lived long enough to understand exactly what she meant. Most men my age want a nurse with a purse. And then she added, I'd rather be alone than become somebody's retirement plan and hospice worker. Brutal? Yeah, but not random and not rare. Now listen, this is important. This is not me saying every man over 55 is running a scheme. That's nonsense. It's lazy thinking. Plenty of men are decent. Plenty of men are responsible. Plenty of men are lonely in a normal human way and looking for real partnership. But enough men aren't that you need to know what it looks like when it's happening, because the women you love might not see it. Not because they're stupid, because they're from a generation that was taught to assume decency until proven otherwise. They were raised to believe a handshake matters. They were raised to believe that a man who speaks softly and shows up consistently is probably safe. They were raised to see kindness as kindness, not as a tactic. And the men who play this game know exactly how to take advantage of that. So consider this a mission briefing, not to make you paranoid, to make you prepared. Because the scam isn't always a stranger in a foreign country asking for gift cards. Sometimes it's a man in your town who knows exactly what to say and exactly when to say it. To understand this, you need to step into his thinking for a minute. A lot of these men don't describe themselves as predators. In their mind, they're doing what they have to do. They worked hard, at least in their own telling. They had jobs that wore them down. They made decisions that didn't work out. Maybe a divorce took half. Maybe they never built anything because they lived fast and spent faster. Maybe they simply assumed life would work itself out. But now they're older. They're looking at the next 15 or 20 years and realizing they don't have the resources to carry themselves. So they need a plan. And the plan isn't to build a life from scratch. The plan is to attach themselves to someone who already built one. That's why he isn't showing up because he suddenly developed a preference for widows. He's showing up because she has a paid-off house, because she has a pension, because she has stability, and because her home is quiet now, because there's an empty chair at the table and silence in the evenings. To him, she's not a girlfriend. She's a landing strip, a soft place to land, a place where bills are already handled, furniture is already paid for, and the fridge already has food in it. And there are 3 reasons he's drawn to her in particular. 1. She's grateful. Think about how invisible grief can make people feel. Friends check in for a month, maybe 2. Then life moves on. Kids are busy. Everyone assumes you're doing better now. Then a man comes along who looks her in the eye, remembers her coffee order, and makes her feel chosen again. She's not interrogating the story, she's absorbing the feeling. 2. She's trusting. A younger woman with money has heard the warnings. She's seen the documentaries. She's guarded by default. But a woman who's been married since decades ago, who built her life with one man, often still believes people generally mean well. He's counting on that. 3. She's tired. Her husband used to handle certain things: repairs, negotiations, money decisions, the heavy lift problems. Now she's doing it all alone. She can do it. She's done hard things her whole life, but she's exhausted. So when a new man offers help, it doesn't feel suspicious. It feels like someone finally took one bag out of her hands. And here's the trap. Relief feels like love when you've been carrying everything by yourself. That's why family members hit a wall. Because from the outside, you see risk. From the inside, she feels seen. One adult child described hearing their mother say, "You don't understand. He sees me." And that sentence can be the start of a disaster. Because 2 years later, in that person's story, the house was no longer protected, the savings were gone, and the man who saw her was nowhere to be found when the consequences arrived. Another family member described the moment everything changed. Their mother said, "You just don't want me to be happy." And the child thought, "I'm not trying to stop happiness. I'm trying to stop homelessness." That's the collision point. Family speaks in logic. The target is living in emotion, and the manipulator lives in the gap between them. People like to believe this is rare because it's uncomfortable to admit how often it happens. But the numbers attached to romance scams and elder financial exploitation are not small. Reported losses are in the billions, not millions. Older adults, especially older women, carry a huge share of the financial damage. And one of the ugliest truths is that many cases never get reported at all. Not because it didn't happen, because admitting it happened can feel humiliating. People fear being judged. They fear being treated like they can't make their own decisions. They fear their children will take over and strip them of independence. So they stay quiet, which means whatever numbers you've heard publicly are often the minimum, not the maximum. And beyond the numbers are the real-world cases, some of them prosecuted, some of them quietly settled, some of them never resolved in court because the victim didn't have the strength or the family support to fight. The point isn't to turn you into a detective. The point is to stop thinking, that couldn't happen to us. Because this doesn't just happen to other people. It happens to people who are grieving, people who are lonely, people who want to believe again, people who don't want their last chapter to be empty. And someone out there is willing to use that. Once you see the pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. Different names, different towns, same moves. Let's walk through the phases. Phase 1. He finds the wounded. He isn't searching for love, he's searching for openings. Fresh grief is an opening. Early widowhood is an opening. A recent divorce is an opening. A woman who doesn't want to be a burden is an opening. And where does he find them? Often in places that are supposed to be safe. Church communities, support groups, community centres, online memorial pages. Sometimes mutual friends. Sometimes, yes, funerals and visitations, where kindness is expected and suspicion feels inappropriate. These men don't see those spaces the way you see them. You see community. They see a catalogue of vulnerability. And the more decent the community is, the easier it is to operate there, because no one wants to be the person who says, something feels off. Decent people hesitate. Predators do not. Phase 2. He moves fast, because he's on a clock. A healthy relationship can breathe, it can unfold, it can take time. But this kind of man? He has urgency. Because time is where questions live. Time is where friends notice patterns. Time is where adult children start digging. So he compresses the relationship. Daily calls, constant presence, big words early, destiny language, spiritual language sometimes. God brought us together. He becomes a flood in her life. And the goal is simple. Bond her to the feeling before she evaluates the facts. He may even mirror her pace. If she's cautious, he's patient. If she's lonely and moving quickly, he falls hard just as quickly. He adjusts like a thermostat. And the whole time, he speaks in sentences that sound comforting but carry hidden meaning. He says, I don't care about money. What it often means, please don't look too closely at mine. He says, your family doesn't understand us. What it often means, your family is asking questions I can't answer. He says, I just want to take care of you. What it often means, I want you to start taking care of me. The words are clean, the intention is not. And what makes it effective is the delivery. Soft voice, warm eye contact, a little emotion, a sad story about how he was hurt before. He doesn't sound like a criminal. He sounds like a man who finally found someone who gets him. And when someone is aching, that sound can be intoxicating. Phase 3. He repositions the family. This is where families start to feel the shift. It usually doesn't begin with a dramatic argument. It begins with little comments that plant doubt. Your son seems controlling. Your sister doesn't like me. Your kids don't want you to move on. Let's keep the holidays quiet this year. Less stress. He's not always attacking the family head-on, he's reframing them. So in her mind, the people who have loved her for decades start to look like obstacles to her happiness. Then comes the trap. The more the family pushes, the more she defends him. The more she defends him, the harder it becomes to admit she may have made a mistake. Because now it's not just about him, it's about her judgment. And nobody wants to feel foolish, especially someone who's already feeling fragile. From your side, the signs look like this. You call and he answers. You visit and she feels guarded. She looks at him before answering questions, like she's checking the temperature in the room. She cancels plans she never used to cancel. She stops sharing details about finances. And if you mention any concerns, suddenly you're negative or jealous or trying to control her life. That feeling, like you're watching someone drift away, is not accidental. It's part of the design. Because he doesn't just need her affection. He needs her separated from anyone who might interfere. He doesn't have to isolate her body. He only has to isolate her trust. Phase 4. The paperwork appears once access is limited. The practical steps begin. And each one by itself sounds reasonable. Let's open a joint account for household expenses. Let's add me to the deed so everything is simple. At our age, power of attorney just makes sense. Let's update the will so there's no confusion. The trick is that every step can be presented as love, maturity, responsibility, and planning. And saying no can be made to feel like betrayal. Because if she hesitates, he can flip it. Don't you trust me? After everything I've done for you, I thought we were partners. So she signs, not because she's dumb, because she's trying to prove she believes in the relationship. And one signature can quietly transfer an entire lifetime. Phase 5. Extraction. Money, labour, and years. This is where the phrase nurse and a purse becomes painfully literal. It's not only about her bank account, it's about her body, her time, her energy, her health. She starts paying for things, covering bills just this once, helping him get back on his feet, funding the couple's lifestyle because he's had a rough patch. And then the caregiving creeps in. Doctor appointments, medications, driving, cooking, cleaning, managing. She becomes the manager of his decline. And here's what people miss. This kind of situation doesn't always end with him leaving. Sometimes the plan is to stay, to be supported until she's depleted, to live in her home, eat her food, use her money, and let her spend her remaining strength maintaining his comfort. So what gets stolen isn't only cash, it's her final years. And the moment she realizes it, if she realizes it, often isn't dramatic. It's quiet. A bank statement with numbers that don't make sense. A document with a name where it shouldn't be. A conversation with a child she finally answers. A sudden understanding that the love story was actually a project, and she was the funding. That kind of realization doesn't always come with screaming. Sometimes it comes with silence. The kind of silence that says, "I can't believe I signed that. I can't believe I defended him. I can't believe I lost years I can't get back." So how do you spot it early, before it's irreversible? Here are the flags that matter most. 1. The math doesn't add up. What does he actually have? Savings? A paid-off car? A stable housing situation? A retirement plan? If the honest answer is nothing, and he's intensely focused on a woman who has stability, then you're not watching romance. You might be watching shopping. 2. The timing is too perfect. Where was he 2 years ago? Why did he appear right after the funeral, right after the divorce, right after the vulnerable moment? If he just happened to show up when she was at her weakest, don't call it fate too quickly. Sometimes it's not fate. Sometimes it's scanning. 3. The family becomes the villain. Pay attention to how he speaks about the people who've known her longest. If every child is controlling, every sibling is jealous, every friend is negative, that's not insight, that's strategy. A man who truly loves her usually wants her connected to people who love her. A man running a plan wants those people neutralized. 4. She gets weird about money. If she managed a household for decades but now can't explain withdrawals, can't track spending, can't tell you what she signed, and becomes defensive when asked, something has changed. Confusion plus defensiveness is often a sign someone else is guiding the story. 5. The paperwork speeds up. There is no reason for urgent financial merging early, no reason for deed changes early, no reason for power of attorney conversations early. If the legal and financial steps are happening faster than emotional trust should reasonably develop, that's not romance pace. That's acquisition pace. I told you there's one question that exposes a lot of these men. It's not aggressive. It's not an accusation. It's simple, almost casual. Here it is. What's your plan if this doesn't work out? That's it. Ask it gently. Ask it like you're asking about weather. A stable, sincere man will answer like a grown adult. He'll talk about his own housing, his own finances, his own ability to stand on his own 2 feet. He might not be rich, but he'll have reality. But a man whose plan is her will often react differently. He may deflect. He may get irritated. He may spin it back on you. Why would you even say that? He may try to guilt her. So you don't believe in us? Because he doesn't have an answer. If it doesn't work, he doesn't land somewhere else. If it doesn't work, the plan collapses. That's why the question matters. It forces him to reveal whether he came with a life or came looking for one. Here's the hard truth. You usually can't argue someone out of a relationship they're emotionally invested in. Every warning can sound like an attack. Every concern can sound like control. So don't come in swinging. Lead with support. Instead of, "He's using you," try, "I'm glad you're not alone. I just want to make sure you're protected no matter what." That lands differently. Then you can say, Would you consider keeping some finances separate? Would you talk to an attorney just to make sure everything is set up the way you want? Would you be open to putting protections in place that keep you safe, even if everything goes well? And if she resists, here's the framing that often works best. I'm not asking you to leave him, I'm asking you to protect yourself, just in case. Then add the part that quietly tests him. If he's the real deal, he'll support that. Because a healthy partner doesn't fear reasonable protection, a predator does. Other practical steps that help without taking control. Quiet verification. A basic background check is cheaper than a nice dinner. If he's clean, great. If he's not, you just learned something before it became irreversible. Professional support. An elder law attorney can set up boundaries, trusts, and documentation that protect her wishes even when someone is influencing her. Bank safeguards. Many banks allow trusted contact options and alerts for unusual activity. That's not control, it's a smoke detector. Stay present. Isolation only works if the family disappears. Keep calling, keep visiting, keep inviting. Even when it's awkward. Especially when it's awkward. Because when the cracks finally show, and they usually do, your consistent presence can be the lifeline. Think of it this way. You're not trying to win an argument, you're trying to keep a door open. If you lost your wife and you're thinking about stepping back into dating, this isn't meant to scare you off. It's meant to show you what many women have been dealing with. Because the woman you might want to ask out, she's been approached, she's been pressured, she's been love-bombed. She's heard speeches that sounded spiritual and sincere and turned out to be transactional. She's seen men move too fast, ask the wrong questions too early, and act offended when she wanted basic boundaries. So when you show up differently, it matters. When you're not in a rush, she notices. When you have your own life, your own place, your own plan, she notices. When you ask about her day instead of her assets, she notices. When you don't act entitled to merge finances, she notices. You don't have to perform, you just have to be real. In a world where a lot of people are running plays, being steady is rare. And rare stands out. This isn't about bashing men. I'm a man. A lot of you listening are men. This is about two responsibilities. First, protect the women who won't see it coming. Your sister, your mother, your daughter, your friend's widow from church. The woman who's lonely enough to confuse relief with love. Second, understand what's happening out there so you can move through it with your eyes open. If you're dating, you now understand why some women are cautious. If you're family, you now understand why logic alone doesn't work. And I want to leave you with one line that sits heavy because it's true. Protect her the way you wish someone had protected your mother. That's the heart of it. Not fear, not paranoia, protection. Because the people running these schemes count on silence. They count on shame. They count on families being too polite to ask hard questions. Don't give them that advantage. Stay alert, stay kind, stay close, and watch out for each other.